Hello, today I'm here with Jerry Kavaliertos, Assistant Director of Financial Aid for TTU Online. We're going to talk about one of the more transformative laws in American higher education, the Higher Education Act of 1965. Before 1965, college was pretty much just for the wealthy. But the HEA, which was a cornerstone of Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, was meant to change all that. It was designed to open the doors to college for everyone, no matter how much money and their family had. This taps right into what some scholars call the educational gospel, that core American belief that school is the path to a better life. And Jerry, thank you for joining with me to break this all down. We're going to dive right into your experience in financial aid. So historians say that the HEA was a game changer. It shifted the government's role from supporting just the schools to also supporting students. From your seat in the financial aid world, how big of a deal was this? And what did that change look like for universities or the students showing up at their door?
Well, Madison, thank you for having me today. And I'll just jump right in. So, the Higher Education Act, or otherwise known as the HEA of 1965, was a huge shift for higher education. Before that, college access was heavily influenced by family, wealth, geography, and social connections, really. The HEA completely reframed college as an attainable pathway for a much broader population, including low-income students, first-gen students, and historically marginalized communities. For universities, this moment marked a true turning point. It was like a cultural and operational awakening. But institutions had to adapt quickly, creating financial aid offices, designing new systems, and learning how to serve students from all walks of life, just not those from privilege and means. But the real story wasn't just about policy and process, it was about the people. For the first time, higher education became a reachable goal rather than a distant dream for some. Doors that had long been closed for people with lesser means were open, giving rise to new voices, new hopes, new opportunities. Think about the success stories you hear from students of lesser means with the power of education have now become CEOs and leaders of organizations. This may not have been possible without the help of the HEA. In essence, this shift didn't just transform students' lives. It uplifted entire communities, it revitalized local economies, it helped shape the backbone of the American middle class. So it's more than just access to education, it's the possibility of accessibility.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I like the possibility of accessibility.
Okay.
The HEA rolls out, suddenly we have federal grants, loans, work study programs. What was that like in a financial aid office, would you say? If you could imagine all of this rolling out and you're in a financial aid office, I imagine it was pretty hectic, scary, but exciting. So what do you think it was like?
Yeah, so those early financial aid offices went through a massive shift overnight. It wasn't just about answering basic questions about tuition anymore. They suddenly became compliance experts, counselors, and processing centers all at once. This shift, where the staff had to quickly learn federal regulations, build relationships across campuses, and also help families who were navigating college for the very first time, it was like a crash course in both policy and people, because you have to combine both of them together. With those challenges came some exciting opportunities. College and universities could finally recruit students based on their talent and potential rather than their financial background, like we said before. Work study programs opened up campus jobs that helped students earn while they learned. And new streams of funding allowed institutions to grow, expand services, and support more of a diverse population of students. Of course, all of this came with some strings attached. More accountability, more record keeping, and a learning curve for administrators suddenly operating under federal oversight constantly. It was complex and demanding. However, it did reshape how higher education operates, and it's still the foundation for many financial aid systems we use today.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point because financial aid does have to follow a lot of federal regulations. But at the end of the day, it's also about the students that we work with. And I think that shows within this act. So it wasn't just about the money. The act knew it wasn't the only barrier. It did create programs like TRIO, which included Upward Bound and student support services that helped first generation students succeed once they got to campus. Even today, studies show how vital these programs are. It was a huge acknowledgement that getting in the door was not the same as actually getting the degree. As an academic advisor, I see this all the time. Money gets a student in the door, but support gets them to graduation. There's a combination and a work with both of them. So the HEA really formalized the link with financial aid and student support services. From your perspective, how critical is that partnership? How much does your office or you personally work with support services to make sure the students aren't just enrolled, but they're actually succeeding in their classes and graduate?
Yeah, so it's absolutely vital and essential. I work with many departments all throughout my day here at TTU. Financial aid might get students through the door, but it's that wraparound support that really pushes them all the way to graduation. Financial pressure is one of the top reasons students hit that pause button or stop their education as a whole, especially when unexpected expenses or life challenges pop up. When financial aid works hand in hand with advising like yourself, tutoring, mentoring, and career services, students get a stronger foundation. They have academic support, someone to talk to, and guidance on their long-term goals, all of which makes it easier for them to stay enrolled and stay motivated in school. From my perspective, the campuses that see the best results are the ones that intentionally blur the lines between the departments, not just a silo, but everybody's working together. Financial aid isn't just about awarding dollars, and support services aren't just about study skills anymore. When they collaborate, communicate, and share information, students feel seen, supported, and confident. That combination is what keeps them moving forward, even when things get challenging, like life can throw them curveballs. At the end of the day, it's that partnership which turns access into completion and ultimately into real opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's great. Having that relationship with the student makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
This does bring up attention, and I think you've seen it in financial aid, and I think there's a general opinion already about financial aid that um, critics argue that access without a real shot at success can be a hollow promise. Sometimes it just leaves the student with debt and no degree to show for it. So you're on the front lines of this exact issue, access versus success. How do you handle tough conversations and have that balance to a student to make sure that they have the access they deserve, but also like keep in mind the risk of them taking on that debt that they might not be able to pay back or finish school with?
Yeah, we do a lot of things, and that's one of the toughest challenges that we face in financial aid. We absolutely want to provide the opportunity, but we or I have the responsibility to promote smart, informed borrowing. Responsible borrowing is something I'm very passionate about. My colleagues and I make it a priority to have honest, realistic conversations with the students about their families about their finances. We talk about the cost of the program, how important it is to borrow only what's truly needed, and how enrollment intensity can impact both their financial aid and academic momentum, especially in those crucial early terms where things can get frustrating and that cadence or that system is not in place. Um, and sometimes those conversations can get tough. For example, I often work with students that want to attend part-time while borrowing the full amount that they're eligible for. While we can not disperse aid on less than 6 credits, it makes the conversation a bit more challenging. On paper, it looks great. Take only one class and stretch out the program over a long period of time. But in reality, the interest accumulates, life gets in the way, and the risk of not finishing increases dramatically. Our online population want a degree that can be completed quickly and with minimal debt. You see that every day. We talk about scholarships and employer funds and different tuition waivers. Helping students understand their finances can be that difference between graduating with manageable debt or not ever completing the degree at all. That's the tension we manage. Mine and my team's goal is to always align the student's academic plan with their financial reality. That way they can stay on track, finish strong, and enter the workplace with a manageable level of debt, if any, if we counsel them correctly, setting them up for long-term success ultimately.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because having that relationship with that student, like we talked about, giving them that knowledge and sharing your knowledge internally with financial aid is what helps set them up for success to know how to borrow, what they're borrowing, what payback will look like. So definitely having that counsel with you guys, I think is needed for financial aid and for the students.
It's paramount.
It is. HEA, the HEA Act of 1965 is not set in stone. It's been authorized by Congress like 8 times, and they add new layers every time. The 1972 reauthorization is a famous one. It created what was called the BEOG, which we all know as the Pell Grant, and that really cemented grants as the foundation of federal aid. But since then, I think we've seen a shift. The original HEA was focused on grants, but over the years, policy changes have tilted things maybe heavily towards borrowing. And that's led us right to a student debt crisis we're talking about today. Have you seen that shift from loans to grants firsthand in your career? And how has that changed the way you've talked to families? Is the financial counseling that you have today different than maybe when you first started in financial aid, or do you feel it stayed the same?
Well, that's a great question. And absolutely. When I first started in financial aid, federal grants, especially the Pell Grant, covered a much larger portion of the student's tuition, putting them in less debt. Students could rely on grant funding to get them through a bigger part of their degree. Today, that purchasing power has dropped significantly, and loans often fill the gap. So, our conversations have pretty much shifted to how do we maximize your grant aid to how do we build a realistic borrowing strategy and how can we make sure you actually complete the program. So, like I said before, it's a shift. It's that partnership between everything. And because of that shift, we spend a lot of time walking students through the realities of interest, repayment plans, and the differences between subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and also plus loans. Families are much more debt conscious now, which is a great thing, which I think is a positive trend, is something that should be have a conversation about these things over and over again. But it also means that we're counseling more intentionally about budgeting and alternative options like scholarships, payment plans, and tuition employer benefits. While here at TTU, we do a great job of offering students grants and scholarships like the Red Raider Guarantee and different things, the reality is that a large number of students will rely on student loans that bridge that gap. A good real world example is a student who returns to finish their degree later in life, which is something that you and I deal with every day with our students, especially our online population. 10, 15 years ago, that might have covered most of their tuition through grants and paid the rest out of pocket. Today, even with Pell, they often need to borrow to fill that void or that gap. So we have to talk them through how that debt aligns with their career goals, timeline to completion, and have that capacity to repay. At the end of the day, it's about helping students make informed decisions that support both their short-term success and their long-term financial stability.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too about being in our roles and adapting to what's provided to us.
Mhm.
There are things that we can't change just ourselves within the government and certain policies and what's provided, but making sure, like you said, they're informed is a big part of your job and having that relationship with them to make sure that they have that information. So I think that's a good point. You talked about working with online students and some in the 10K degree completion program. My work's a lot like yours with advising these non-traditional students, especially adult learners finishing their degree. When you read the history, it seems like the HEA was built for the traditional 18-year-old living on campus, going full time, which makes sense. That's a large population of colleges. Um, but I'd like to hear your perspective on how well this has adapted to modern online students or the adult learner. But I know that there's certain things we're navigating right now with TTU Online and having 8-week courses, eight-week terms. So are there any like specific policies or rules for part-time students or SAP progress, satisfactory academic progress, that you feel help or hinder this specific population?
Yeah, so in my opinion, the HEA has come a long way,
Mhm.
but I can feel that some of those policies are outdated. A lot of the policy was designed for that, like you said, traditional, full-time, 18-year-old living on campus with a few outside responsibilities. But today's online and adult learners are a completely different story. They're working full-time, raising kids, caring for a family, and juggling those real-world financial pressures that we deal with every day. Their path to a degree isn't just about academics, it's also about life management. There are some helpful pieces in place. Professional judgments where we can review a student's file gives financial aid offices more room to adjust when life throws students a curveball. And student loan structures are flexible to support those non-traditional students. But there's some real pain points. Satisfactory academic progress, like you mentioned, rules can be tough on adult learners. One unexpected setback can jeopardize both their aid and their momentum of completion. Aid disbursement schedules don't always sync with those shorter 8-week terms like we have, which can delay free funds that students are depending on for their books, supplies, and different things. And we don't see enough wraparound support at the federal level, even though online students rely on things like advising, tutoring, and tech support the most. Online learning isn't slowing down. I've seen it in my tenure of over 15 years in financial aid. It's just growing and it's going to keep growing. And it's becoming a pathway to their reality of educational dreams. This means policies like the HEA have to evolve with the students they serve. That's just fundamental. The
Mhm.
students that and policies that worked 50 years ago aren't going to work tomorrow. We want to support access and completion, and we need a policy framework that built for the realities of modern learners, not just the students of 1965.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. It's been revised a lot of times and it's good to revise that. There's been some pros
Mhm.
and cons throughout the years, but yeah, definitely keeping in mind who is our student population as well. Is it just those 18-year-olds? Well, now that online is so big, there's a lot more access to other non-traditional students and other populations. This kind of leads into my last question. If you had a direct line to the lawmakers drafting the next reauthorization of the HEA, what's one thing you would tell them? This is just based on your experience, maybe a critical change that you'd like to see, or just a comment of something you maybe want them to look out for.
Hmm. So you're giving me one option.
I'll let you do multiple. I'll be nice.
Well, we'll just stick with one right now.
Okay.
I think the priority that I'd pick, it would be restoring that purchasing power of the Pell Grant and making sure that it's aligned with inflation. Right now, it's not. It's just all over the place. When Pell covered a large portion of the students' tuition, those students didn't have to rely so heavily on loans. So they came out of debt, out of school with less debt. Increasing its value would instantly reduce borrowing, like I just said, especially for those low-income students and adult learners who already are managing tight budgets, possibly student loans in the past, mortgages, car payments, kids' soccer practice, all that stuff. I'd also push for policy updates that reflect how people are actually learning today. Flexible enrollment models, short-term workforce programs, which are there, and also micro-credentialing that are becoming essential pathways, but more geared towards those working adults who need those skills without committing to a traditional 4-year schedule. Certificate programs are a great one to think about. And right now, a lot of those certificate programs, federal aid does not cover. At the end of the day, today's students are not the same students as 1965, and our legislation has to catch up and adapt to what we're dealing with right now. We should be offering not just access to higher education, but a realistic, financial, responsible path to completion. Everything is about having the student complete their degree with as little debt as possible.
Yeah, I think those are great goals to have and I would mirror those same things if I could also say something. I think that one of the jobs of financial aid is to make sure the student's served in what questions they have on financial aid. But I think you get to really see the internal struggles and really the day-to-day details that not a lot of people see outside of the financial aid office. You learn more about the policies and the regulations and how that can affect the school and the students within it. So it was really great to get your experience and your viewpoints on the Higher Education Act and what that looks like today for students and maybe what it'll look like in the future if we can have some changes. So I appreciate you talking with us today. It's been a pleasure and I hope I get an A.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute honor to talk about financial aid, which I don't get to talk about enough between policy and procedure and so forth. And it's great to reflect on how far we've come and how much opportunity still exists. Now, if your grade's riding on this, I'm happy to write you a letter of recommendation.
Thank you. How nice.
Well, you
Thank
have yourself
you.
a great day.
You too.
All
Bye.
righty. Bye-bye.